Illuminati must be destroyed, not the inner tyrant. We've got time for that. We're not involved in that seriousness that Barrett was talking about. We're not authentic. We are sedated. We don't act from this elan vital, this will to power. We have no inner dialogue, right? We do repress ourselves and suppress others, and we are immersed in the collective. Right? You know what that means? We are you, I am who I am because of her. All that is I'm in the same mess you're in. Isn't that just wonderful? You're in the same mess I'm in, and I'm in the same mess you're in. Hey, let's have a beer together. Let's get married. I'm existentially naked, so are you. I'm selfless, so are you. Let's get on eHarmony and date. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We are you, the paper mache creature. What's that Mark Burgess song? We're not in Manchester, sorry, London. I can hear them calling down to me, rows and rows of faces on a balcony, come up here and set us free. Yeah, freedom, a new phenomenon. Kings and masters and lords were needed in the past. We don't think about what to do. You tell us what to do, and if we obey, we get rewarded. It's the best system ever. Global Village number 2 is on its way. Human 2.0 is on its way. What the hell, subjectivity? I don't even like my own emotions. Can we drug them out? Yes, we can. Thank you. I'm first in line. Psychological insight, enlightenment, introspection? No, not interested. Just in the same way that we've handled all this other rubbish. Remember that centrality idea? So that religions have handed us this lunatic idea of a remote, separate, individualized God sitting somewhere behind the clouds, who's omniscient, omnipotent, who's up there, separate, divided, abstract. When in fact there is such an energy as the God energy, but it's now, as I say, we're in a good time. The quantum scientists have proved it, right? The chaos theory, Gaia theory, whatever theory you want to talk about, they've even proved it, that this thing is an ambient intelligence, never forgetting that it includes the body. It is plastic. It is everywhere. It is all pervasive. It is intelligent, all permeating. Tennyson said, nearer is it than breathing and closer than hands and feet. It's not a centralized, right? It's not centralized, it's ambient. Or in the language of the, who is it? The David Bohms, it's enfolded, implicate, as opposed to explicate. It's enfolded within in its own self. He's basically just borrowing concepts from Blake, William Blake. But Nietzsche explains why we've got this monkey business. He says there's always been sickly people among those who invent fables and long for God. They have a raging hatred for the enlightened man and for that youngest of virtues, which is called honesty. No virtue. Now we come to the final section, guys, where we condense things and we hit the more deeper, more meaningful solutions. Still bearing in mind what we're doing, except we've expanded tyranny to be action we do to ourselves. Yeah? I hope we've had a better understanding of this concept of tyranny anyway. And the kind of psychic community we must develop, the kind of new way of seeing that we need to inculcate, and what it will entail to do that, and what we might even receive from doing it. In overview, as we wind down, we've looked at the ancestral trauma factor, which is, as I said, co-opted by architects of control. They know what we don't know, and that we're in pieces psychologically. With the fragmentation of consciousness, and that fragmentation can be defined as the imperial self rivaling the ego or pseudo-self, and that they've got 2 different realities. And we even find, if you factor in what Wilhelm Reich, plug in the Reichian theories, and you've got that this ego can now be defined as the human flesh itself, the very skin, the endless bioenergy. They knew it because they used to have on healing to people. That's how they healed the ego. See, Freud and all the other psychologists talk to you. Reich said, no, that's got to go. We would deal with the body as the ego. That's why it's one of the greatest healing systems physically as well. They work with the bioenergy of the body. Built on Freud, but much more powerful. Then we looked at this amazing concept of the antipathy to nature, a seed, a demonic, monstrous, but understandable, nucleated, immense animosity that's so repressed and non-conscious, but towards the very thing that we should have the greatest relationship with, and they co-opted that as well. We looked at that. And that can be considered, if not the major root of pathology, at least one of the most major roots of it. and certainly one of the major roots of the cocktails of disorders. We looked at the ubiquitous collectivism and extroversion, the pulling outwards into the Unterwelt and Mitwelt. And that implies the dependency on approval. And more importantly, if you don't get it, because we often don't get what we want, then I'm a neurotic. I have deep anxiety when they just don't think I'm wonderful. And ultimately culminating in total self-hate, shame, guilt, masochism, self-murder, doesn't matter what you call it. And this amazing concept of how, if we don't watch this, that we throw out our own legitimate, because we've done it, white magic, black magic, no, they're doing white magic. You're doing the work for them. And now to the absolute core of this section on solutions. How do you untie the whole thing? Where is that scimitar? Where is that sword of Elendil? Where is it? Where is that Excalibur? How do you go back to the beginning without a regression? One aspect, go back to nature. Go back and talk to your best friend. Because if she starts talking back, you won't want to be bothered with anything else. Your pack will fall from your back, and if you're wearing rags, you won't even notice it. Christ said, go without script nor purse. Because once you're in that enchantment, nothing else matters. How can you say that's a loveless person? How could you say that? So, the nexus of it, the absolute beating heart of this thing, is a thing that I refer to as the value of values, or the virtue of virtues, the supreme virtue. What is it? It's simply this. Borrowed from the existential psychologist, it is simply the value of existence. We hinted at it slightly in the very beginning. We have an unhealthy relationship to death as we put it off and talk about mortality. As the Heidegger and their being unto death crap, it's never worked. It's a fundamental of existential philosophy, but even it doesn't work for a lot of people. They go, yeah, well, even if I do think about my death, I just kind of feel morbid about that. No, he's not talking about being morbid about it and obsessed about it. He's talking about realizing the simple certainty, you didn't create yourself and you're going to die. And if you really deeply contemplate that finitude and that mortality, it enriches your existence. You can even type it into the internet, being unto death, or Martin Heidegger, or whatever, existential being unto death. And they will explain this, that the concept that you are not going to be here, right, and finitude, that you have a past or future in a moment of expiration. Kierkegaard, Heidegger, these people, Nietzsche, they understood that that is one of the hallmarks that will enrich and give vividness and immediacy to even the mundane. And most of the scholars and writers and painters and poets at the time grabbed it and went with it, and that's why we have some of the great literature we have, the Hermann Hesses, the D.H. Lawrences, you name it, the Rilkes, because they understood what these people were talking about. But the only trouble is we are so morbid and so evading of this point that that even doesn't work. Because we just don't do it. We always think of death in something of a morbid way. But the thing is that this lack of virtue, this lack of this virtue, which is the virtue that arises from the value of values, the value of existence, is the supreme root of all pathology, psychic or social. It's overarching, it's all-encompassing. Because it is ultimately, as they say, it is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Having this is the fulcrum that, remember in the movie Dune at the end, he goes, I will bend like a wind in the reed, a reed in the wind. And he flips, and the prince succeeds. He kills his adversary. That martial art, that Aikido, is connected in this understanding of unlocking this matrix. Literally, simply, without sledgehammers, with great deftness. Now, the man with this virtue is morally superior. He is the true individual, the true self. He alone brings meaning from within himself. He has no master above, no slave below. His relationship with pain and loss is different. He's not swayed by what others think, say, and do. He's enlightened. He's that feather. What you say, think, and do, I hear it. I know it. But I'm not going to be emotionally and psychologically traumatized by what you're doing. You are traumatized by it. I am not. Is he moral? As we said, yes he is. Because he does not blindly, he's not immoral because he, like Nietzsche, won't follow a bunch of useless, contrived rules and regulations. His edict, as Crowley said, is because he will not harm another because it's to harm himself. The Socratic approach. So he's deeply moral. In fact, he's morally superior. And that's why he's a threat to those who are his antithesis on this planet. If things go wrong in the world, says Gustav Jung, this is because something is wrong with the individual, because something is wrong with me. Therefore, if I am sensible, I shall put myself right first. For this I need, because no outside authority no longer means anything to me, and knowledge of the innermost foundations of my being, in order that I may base myself firmly on the eternal facts, right, the certainties of the human psyche. But nobody can walk that road with you, as I can't stand on the same ground that you occupy. Now this totality of knowing, this totality of action, and the consequence, the kind of thinking that comes with this virtue of virtues, the ultimate virtue of the understanding of the value of your existence, the complexion of your personality, your psychology, was summarized by Nietzsche in the very well-known phrase, but my God, how misinterpreted phrase, the will to power. The will to power is an élan vital, a life force, an attitude, a way of seeing, born out of the aesthetic awe that started all reason. And that started all mathematics, concepts, inquiry, investigation, curiosity. The being who's involved with this, who's empowered with this, directs the will to power first and foremost towards himself. But they didn't tell you that, did they, when they give you the Nietzsche class? They're keeping on telling you he's going to put this will to power into the hands of some tyrant who's going to use it on everybody else. No, that's in a bunch of people who are pseudo-Nietzscheans who came later. Nietzsche himself said that the will to power must always be, and first be, directed towards a person's own inner being, to deconstruct the lies, to have the zero tolerance for the lie. And also to do that because you're cleaning the garden, you're cleaning away the weeds because you know what's coming. You're cleaning the cup because you want it to be ever filled. You're doing that Taoist work of keeping the space there so that you can accomplish without action. Because another kind of action is taking place, a totality. And it's not purely mental or purely emotional, it's total or aesthetic. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, if you have gained this within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have this within you, what you do have in you will kill you. Another translation of this is to bring that thing from within you out will save you, to not bring it out will destroy you. What thing? Well, we can't do that. Nobody can do it. Existentially mutilated and vacant, just as Big Brother wants it to be. All those other syndromes, right? Suicide, self-destruction, futility, meaningless, depression. Simple depression of saying, I got no past, I got no future, I can't get out of this, there's no hope. Do you know how that gets cracked? It's cracked, or it's not cracked, because the person, obviously, is unable to be aware that the bad news is the world isn't meant to turn you on. Where did you ever get that idea? The world isn't meant to give you meaning, and other people aren't there to give you meaning, by the way. And if you really even unpack that, you'll realize that that's a pretty tyrannical need of yours to be fulfilled by anyone else, or even the world for that matter. Meaning comes from within. You're here to build your own soul. And many people who just snap into that, as has happened, they got it, and they never are depressed again, not in the same way. That's right, meaning has to come from within myself, if I'm capable of doing it. That cracks the depression. But as long as you remain fixed to this idea that, she's going to do it, he's going to do it, they're going to do it, we, us and our, it'll never happen.